We're going to continue working with the power reduction and half angle formulas. This is part 2 of a 2-part video. We're going to be looking particularly at examples of these half angle identities here. So we've already derived sine and cosine. I'm not going to bother to derive the tangent. It's just sine over cosine, just a one-step derivation there. So we've got all 3 of them. I did forget to cross off one more. We're not going to be looking at this formula as well. So as you're updating this reference sheet and making it ready to go for any homework assignment or exam that we've got, you don't need any of the formula groups that I have crossed off. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how we can apply these half angle formulas. We have the formulas. We just want to get to some examples. So let me scroll down here to our examples. The first one we have is cosine of a half angle. Let me go ahead and put the formulas just up above here. So cosine of u over 2 or alpha over 2 or beta over 2, however you want to express this, is plus or minus the square root of 1 plus cosine u divided by 2. Sine looks almost identical except for the negative sign, the subtraction symbol in the numerator, 1 minus cosine of u divided by 2. This plus or minus here depends on u over 2's quadrant. And we'll see how to get there. So that just determines, is cosine going to be negative or is cosine going to be positive for the angle that we're working with? And we're going to see how to work with that even though we don't know the exact angle. Okay, so in this first example, u is in quadrant 3. So quadrant 3 lives over here, 1, 2, 3. It's between pi and 3 pi halves. So I'm going to start by determining the sign. Do I want a positive or do I want a negative? So I'm going to do that first. So I can say that pi is less than u is less than 3 pi halves. That's what being in quadrant 3 means. If I divide everything by 2, divided by 2, divided by 2, divided by 2, now I have that pi halves is less than its half angle, u divided by 2, is less than 3 pi fourths. Well, this lives, here is pi halves, here is 3 pi fourths. So it lives here somewhere. And that little slice of the pie where this angle u over 2 lives is in quadrant 2. In quadrant 2, cosine is negative. So we're going to choose the negative. So we've got that down. Let's go ahead and just plug everything now into our formula. So we've chosen negative. So I can write cosine u divided by 2 is equal to negative square root of 1 plus cosine u, which is negative 1 plus negative 0.637, all divided by 2. This just goes right into my calculator, and I want 4 decimal places. Okay, so right into my calculator. Let me clear this. So I'm going to put my negative symbol there next to the enter key, and then square root of, I'm going to do parentheses for my numerator, 1 minus 0.637, close parentheses for the numerator, divided by 2, and then enter. So we get negative 0.426. It says 4 decimal places, so negative 0.4260. So negative 0.4260. So the parentheses that I use, I'm going to put them in yellow. I put parentheses here and here around that numerator. I did not use the parentheses here and here, but I did use the square root. Let me put it back. Okay, so that's what I typed into my calculator. Okay, part B. So in part B, the very first thing I'm going to do is determine if I want the positive or the negative square root. this time U lives in quadrant 4. So quadrant 4 is between 3 pi halves and 2 pi. So I can say that 3 pi halves is less than U is less than 2 pi, but I really want pi halves. So if I divide everybody by 2, I end up with the inequality that says 3 pi fourths is less than my half angle is less than pi. That little slice, 3 pi fourths and pi, lives right here. This one's also in quadrant 2. So I know that this is in quadrant 2. In quadrant 2, sine is positive. So I know that I want to use the positive square root for my formula. So I want to use the positive square root, but I also need, here it is, and I'm going to use the positive, but I also need cosine, and I don't have cosine. So I'm going to work with my triangle and come up with cosine. So for my next step, let me go back to my blue pen. I'm going to work with my given trig value, which is this guy. I'm going to use SOHCAHTOA. I know that tangent is opposite over hypotenuse. So tan u is negative 13.197. SOHCAHTOA, this is opposite. I said hypotenuse. OA, opposite over adjacent. If I were just to graph this guy, u lives in quadrant 4, so it lives over here. That's u. So my little reference angle, that guy lives there. So I can think of opposite as being negative 13.197 and adjacent being 1. I need cosine. Cosine u, SOHCAHTOA, so SOHCA is adjacent over hypotenuse. I need to know what my hypotenuse is equal to. And I'm just going to use the Pythagorean theorem to figure that out. So let me erase this guy. So I'm just going to use my Pythagorean theorem. And then I'm so close. There we go. Okay, so using my Pythagorean theorem, 1 squared plus negative 13.197 squared is equal to hypotenuse squared. So my hypotenuse is equal to the square root of that guy. Let's go ahead and put that into our calculator. So I've got second square root of 1 plus, I don't need that negative sign because I'm squaring it, 13.197, right? 13.197 squared. Okay, so I get 13 point, and I need to keep some decimals here. So I get 13 point, let me get a smaller pen, 13.2348, 2348. So now I can go ahead and figure out what my cosine value is. So I've got hypotenuse, so cosine u is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent is 1. Hypotenuse is always positive, so 13.2348. Let's go ahead and put this into our formula, and I'm running out of room, so I'm going to go ahead and do it down here. You might want to finish this guy on a separate piece of paper. So I've got that the sine of u divided by 2 is equal to, we decided that we're in quadrant 2, where sine is positive. So positive square root 1 plus cosine, which is 1 divided by 13.2348 all over 2. I need parentheses around that numerator to put it into my calculator. So clear. Positive, so I can jump right to the square root, parentheses, 1 plus cosine, which is adjacent, 1 divided by hypotenuse, 13 point, 13.2348, parentheses, divided by 2. And I get 0.73333. I wanted 4 decimal places. So we get 0.7333. Okay, that's our answer. Last one. Okay, last one's got a cotangent in it. I'm going to erase this work right here. So if you don't have everything written down, just pause me for a second. If you do, that's great. You might, again, want another piece of paper because I have some more work to do here with part C. So part C, I'm going to start the same way that I started these other ones. I want to decide if I want the positive or negative square root. U lives in quadrant 2. So quadrant 2, that's going to be between pi halves and pi. I want to divide everybody by 2 because I want to know where U halves lives, the half angle. So this tells me that my half angle lives between pi fourths less than U halves less than pi halves. So that little slice of the pie is right here, and it's in quadrant 1. Everything's positive in quadrant 1, so I'm going to choose the positive square root. The next thing we need to do is to get to that cotangent. So cotangent is SOHCAHTOA. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So this is adjacent over opposite. Negative 4.539 over 1. If I were to draw this triangle or get an idea of what this triangle would look like over here in quadrant 2, adjacent is negative 4.539. My opposite side is 1. I need to figure out what my hypotenuse is. The hypotenuse is the square root of 1 squared plus 4.539 squared. There. Okay, calculator. Square root of 1, I don't need the squared, plus 4.539. 539, yes, 539 squared. Enter. 4.6479. So hypotenuse is about, darn, where'd it go? Is about 4.64. 4.6479 or 785. Okay, now we can go ahead and do our, what were we doing? Our cosine of a half angle. Back to my blue pen. Try and keep things a little bit organized. So cosine of my half angle. This guy lives in quadrant 1, so I want the positive square root. 1 plus cosine of U. Cosine is going to be, SOHCAHTOA is going to be my adjacent side over my hypotenuse. So it's going to be negative 4.539 divided by 4.6479 divided by 2. Sheesh. Parentheses, of course, around that numerator. Don't forget that. Gosh, we're going to have to work for this one. And let's go ahead and put this into the calculator. Gosh, my symbols there are just a little bit in the way, but I think there we go. So positive square root. So I want the square root of parentheses from my numerator. 1, I'm just going to write minus here, 4.539 divided by hypotenuse, which is 4.6479. Parentheses to close my numerator, divided by 2. So I'm just going to check 4.539, good. 4.6479, good. I was adding a negative here, so I just wrote the negative. Everything looks great. Hit enter, and I get 0.108. They wanted 4 decimal places, so 0.1082. So I guess yellow's fine. 0.82. Okay, so if you've got the cosine like we did in part A, it's not a ton of work. It's when you're not given the cosine, we just have to go back and use just good old SOHCAHTOA to figure out the missing hypotenuse, which was the case in both of these. But if you're given something else, you might need to find a different missing side. So these are applications of that half angle formula.